Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of the Bat Slam podcast. My name is Damon here with my co-host David. This week, we're going to run down the National League and American League Division Series, and then we're going to preview the League Championship Series that are actually starting tonight as we're recording this. Phillies and San Diego are in the top of the second inning, so we'll get our predictions in before that. But before we get into all that, how you doing, David?
Doing good. A nice week there last week.
No, it wasn't.
But well, it was nice for those of us who didn't have a team in the race, as it were. But um, mostly fun for me. How was it for you though? Because I think we all know what's about to happen.
Um, Physical pain
Yeah.
for forever. We'll get into it in there, but that Saturday night was not a great one. I
Oof.
was actually out of town Friday after work for racing this weekend. We had a big race, 2 hours away. Drove up there Saturday. I didn't get to watch the game on Friday night because we were at the track all night. Saturday, we ended up breaking, not even being able to race. Drove home, got home in time to watch the game, and then that happened. We'll talk about here in a little bit, but it was not a great Friday and Saturday night uh, in this side. But first we'll mention Matt's on vacation, so you won't hear his side on the Braves. So we'll probably hear that next week. But taking a well needed vacation on his side, and we'll go ahead and jump right into to that Braves and Phillies series that saw the Phillies prevail.
Yeah, how about that, man? And the Phillies, not only did they prevail, they blew the Braves away in games 3 and 4. It was 1-1 after the Braves won game 2, and the Phillies won game 3 and game 4, just absolutely going away. Um, Bryce Harper showed up, man. He had 8 hits, a couple of homers, and a 500 average overall in the 4 games. I mean, he came out to play, but the big hit of the series and I think the one that sparks the Bat Slam podcast this week is Rhys Hoskins hitting just a monster 3-run home run there to really put that game out of reach in game 4 and pretty much send the Phillies on to the NLCS.
Yeah, I mean, who would have saw this coming? I mean, in our predictions episode, we talked about how this team was they had offensive talent, but the Braves were just deeper, on the offensive side. And then, mentioning the pitching staff, you had Aaron Nola, you had Zach Wheeler, but those were only the two starts. You were going into game one with Ranger Suarez. They were kind of able to survive that, and they beat Fried in game one to really like set the tone for that series. The Braves are able to take that game two back, but the Phillies kind of, when you're able to steal one of those two games, in the home team's ballpark, you swing home field advantage in your direction. And the Phillies, once they got into Philadelphia, and we know that crowd is one of the most ruckus and rowdy crowds in all of baseball. And it being 11 years, I think it was, since the Phillies had been in the playoffs, you knew Citizens Bank Park
Mm-hmm.
was going to be bumping, and they kind of brought the energy, and that team really showed out. I mean, Harper, Rhys Hoskins with the bat slam was one of the most electric moments of the playoffs so far. JT Realmuto's inside the park homer that he had as well was
Mm-hmm.
another one. This team they were able to find a way. I mean, we've worried about their pitching staff and that bullpen, but the offense really showed up, and the pitching staff did a really good job. I mean, I think even Syndergaard had a really good start in the series. So it's going to be interesting to see the next series that they have and what to do that way. But as part of it is, I don't know what happened to the Braves. I mean, it's just I don't know if they just didn't show up offensively, or if they just got kind of shell shocked, um, or what was really the story there. But I think the story of the series, of that series in general, was more that the Phillies rose to the occasion and kind of just snatched it away from the Braves than the Braves really failing.
Well, I was actually going to present the opposite point of view here. I think the Braves, not even necessarily the pitching was a problem, but once the pitching got behind, the offense didn't seem to be able to pick up their slack. I mean, they did throw a shutout in game 2, so there was good quality pitching in there. But between Spencer Strider coming back from the rest and the injury, but then you have Austin Riley, who's an MVP candidate, had 1 hit in 15 plate appearances. Marcell Ozuna and Eddie Rosario went hitless in the series. You had Michael Harris had 1 hit in 14 plate appearances in the series. And William Contreras had one hit in the series in 8 plate appearances. So a huge chunk of the guys that you would have expected to show up for the Braves, and that really the Braves needed to show up, didn't show up at all, right? And then Ozzy Albies was still out hurt. Dansby Swanson didn't really show up either. He only had 2 hits. So just a lot of problematic plate appearances by the Braves in this series. A lot of strikeouts. 43 strikeouts in 4 games is kind of monstrous, especially given a Phillies pitching staff that isn't, top tier. Because I don't even think Zach Wheeler got beat in game
Yeah,
2. Like, it wasn't Zach Wheeler, wasn't the top end of this Phillies pitching staff that was blowing them away. I think Aaron Nola only had like 4 or 5 strikeouts. And double checking that. Yeah,
he had
6
6.
strikeouts. Yeah. So the Phillies pitching wasn't just blowing them away. I feel like it was just the Braves. They did not feel comfortable. The only one who seemed to be, the only ones who seemed to be comfortable were Darno and an Olsen. And they couldn't keep the Braves afloat with a couple of solo home runs from those guys. I think they just got beat by a Phillies team that wanted it more here.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and that sort of allows us to kind of push over to the second series here, because I think you're going to have a lot of the same similarities, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
Dodgers and Padres. Looking at that series, you had the Padres able to pull that one out and move on to the National League Championship Series. The Dodgers were able to take Game 1 at home, but then the Padres basically came back the next 3 games and really kind of swept them. I mean, we knew Game 1 was going to be a struggle for the Padres with Clevenger on the mound, but then Darvish, Snell, and Musgrove, they kind of really were able to set the tone in that series.
Yeah, I said 45 strikeouts was a lot. The Padres had 45 strikeouts in the series too, and the Dodgers had 44. The pitching ruled this series, though. I mean, 3 of the games ended up 5-3, where just one little clutch hit at the end of the game was all it would take, and to put one team over the top. And the way the pitching seemed to go, man, it was every run felt like a dagger, and the Padres scrapped together 5 behind you, Darvish, in game 2. That was pretty huge, because we remember Yu's kind of blunders with the Dodgers in the postseason in 2017, and he's been looking to get back there and pitch in the postseason and pitch in those meaningful games. I know he talked about it when he was on the Cubs, and he'd always he didn't regret it, but he just hated that he didn't get it done for the Dodgers in Game 7, and he kind of the pitch tipping and stuff. So, he always feels like he has a little more extra to prove when he comes to Los Angeles, and he came out shoved. Blake Snell was great, and then Game 4 was one of the better games. You had the really good Game 4 in the Phillies and Braves series, but this Game 4 between the Dodgers and Padres was a kind of an all-time classic, where there were no big home runs hit. It was all the kind of the small ball classic rally, where just a couple of base runners kind of snowballed into a big Padres rally, that finalized with Jake Cronenworth putting the Padres up for good with a 2-run single up the middle. And he was probably the MVP of the Padres series with 7 hits, 5 RBIs, a home run. I mean, he was really, really good. And I think he's the leader in championship win probability added. So among all the guys I've seen so far. So Cronenworth, man, he came out to play, and the Padres showed that, you don't have to have really good offense. You just have to get those key hits. And I
Yeah,
think that was the big thing for them.
yeah, and that's sort of what LA lacked. I mean, this was a good series on both sides. They both had base runners. They both worked good at bats. I mean, they took pitchers deep in counts early on, and forced were trying to force to get to the bullpens, um, and it just came down to the Padres were getting the timely clutch hits. I mean, you look at that bottom half of that lineup, really, that's been what's really carrying them through. But I mean, Jake Cronenworth, a 438, he's not really the bottom of the lineup, but he's always been a Dodger killer. Machado batted 357 in this one, but then you had Austin Nola and Trent Grisham. Both had 2 RBIs, both had 2 walks. They both hit over 300 in this series, and they both had timely hits. I think I want to say it was Nola in game 2, I want to say, that gave them the lead.
Yeah, I think it
And
was.
then, and then I
And he
want
had
to,
another big hit in Game 4.
Yeah, and then I want to say it was Grisham that hit the go-ahead homer in Game 3 to give them the win, and that
Yep.
went 2-1. Um, and then even in Game 4, the it wasn't even the Cronenworth hit that really was the dagger there. I mean, that was kind of like the final dagger, but the one that really kind of changed the momentum was the Hassan Kim one.
Hmm.
They had runners on like first and third, I believe, at this point. Sorry, they had a runner on second. I forget who it was. Hit to Freddie, and Freddie tried to make a diving play, knocked off his glove, and they had first and third at that point. And they
That
kind of
was Nola.
pulled.
Yeah.
Was it Nola? Okay, so it
Yeah.
was Nola at that point, and then they kind of pulled the infield in a little bit,
Yep.
and then Kim just bounced it right down the third base line, right past Max Muncy.
Yep.
Um, and part of me wonders, not, this is nothing against the Padres, I'm just this on this side. uh Justin Turner wasn't fully healthy going into this series, so he was DHing a lot,
Hmm.
or DHing the entire series. And Muncy hadn't played a ton of third this year. I mean, he'd played some, but I wonder if Turner isn't able to make that play in that situation. um,
Hmm.
but but Kim was able to bounce it down the line. I think the run scored there, and then I think they had first and second, or second and third again at that point, and
Yep.
then that's when um, that
Soto.
it was it Soto
Soto.
next.
Soto hit a single,
Soto hit a
and then
single, yeah, yeah, and then he tried to steal second, and they should have thrown him out there, and they
yep.
didn't, and
He was just trying
then
to get the run to score. He was trying to get in a run down, and they just let him
yeah,
have second, and then Cronenworth
yeah,
takes it. But
Cronenworth did that. So
you know,
this series really was, the Dodgers didn't show up in the timely situations, and the Padres did. I mean,
yeah.
they both had good at bats. They both got runners on base. The Padres just played a better series and were able to get the timely hits when they needed them.
And so I'm gonna use this as an opportunity because what the big talk on Twitter and on all the baseball media right now is, wow, we just saw two 100 win teams lose in the playoffs, and never mind what we're about to talk about, right? Because if as soon as we get into these next two series, is 200 win teams won the expected series. So the talk right now seems to be that for some reason this means that the Padres and the Phillies are undeserving when they showed up and played, in the Padres case, right there with the 100 win Dodgers, and in the Phillies case, they played above the 100 win Braves. I mean, the Phillies were clearly the better team in this series. So at the end of the day, baseball is all about getting into the dance. You have to get your shot. If you don't play, if you don't go into the season approaching it like every season is a gift and an opportunity to get into the playoffs, which the Dodgers do. The Dodgers are in the playoffs every single year, and to their credit, they've won one playoff series, one playoff ring, but they haven't been able to make it all the way there yet. But you look at every team that's made it there. It seems like every year there's a team that goes on this kind of a run, right? You have since almost since the Royals, the Giants, like the Cubs, the Red Sox, the Astros, the Nationals, the Braves, the Dodgers. Every team's had their run, and it has been very difficult for teams to string together multiple World Series in a season, and it's very, very rare that we see the best team win the World Series. I think the Cubs in 2016, the Red Sox in 2018, that, and maybe the Dodgers in 2020. Those are the teams that won, that kind of were deserving of the World Series. But the baseball playoffs boils baseball games, which we decided on 162 regular season games over 6 months. You boil it down to 7 games, you're going to get upsets. It's going to function like the first day of the NCAA tournament, where most of the time the favorite wins, but sometimes you get those upsets, and the upsets are what make the baseball interesting and what make October baseball so special. If the best team won every year, if we just handed out a trophy at the end of the regular season, this would not be, we would never have moments like this. You would never have moments like the Royals winning the World Series, or the Braves last year, the Nationals, right? None of that would have happened. And while I think expanding the playoffs to where it is now might have been a little much, especially when you haven't expanded the league, this is fine. I mean, you think the best team that ever, the most wins that have ever been accrued by a team was the 2001 Mariners, and they did not win the World Series. where is their justice, right? If we're going to get upset about the Dodgers winning 111 games and then failing to put away the Padres, a team that they beat regularly in the regular season.
No, I mean you're absolutely right. Um, you know, my whole thing after that series ended on Saturday was postseason baseball's different. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just different. The energy, the environment, the games, everything is just so much different. It's heightened. You gotta be able to limit the mistakes. You gotta be able to have the clutch and timely hits. You got to be able to pitch well. Um, and I think you've seen those little bits of downfall. Like the Dodgers, the past couple weeks of the season, or the last couple weeks of the season, weren't playing great baseball either. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't playing, they weren't blowing people away. Like you kind of saw that. I don't know if it was that they wore down or just what, but they just didn't. They weren't playing as good as that either. So you get into this postseason series, and in a 7 game series, anything can happen. In a 5 game series, anything can literally happen.
Yeah.
Like you know, you could maybe make the argument like, hey, we should have more 7 game series. But I mean, the wild card's what, 3 and then 5, now 7 and then 7 in the World Series. Like in those series, most of the time you get the best teams to win. I think it can be more kind of fluky maybe in the 5 game series if it's easier for the worst team to kind of win in those series. But it's postseason baseball. Like you have to be able to pull it off
Mm-hmm.
yourself. I mean, like you mentioned, if we just handed that out, what good would this be? I mean, you have
Right.
the NCAA tournament. I mean, how many people get into that tournament that beat a number 1 seed, and you're like, well, they shouldn't. How many times has Duke or North Carolina or Kansas or Kentucky or any of those teams lost in the second round?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, well, they should be the champion. It's like, no, it just happens. It's what postseason baseball. It's why we love these moments and the energy so much, and why it means so much more when you're able to pull it off, because it is a grind. These postseason games are the longest games. You have to be on edge at every single moment. And, if the best teams fail in that scenario, they got to regroup with themselves and,
Mm-hmm.
pick up the pieces and figure out what the hell went wrong. I mean, being the Dodger fan, I heard Friedman, sorry, talk today, and he's like, it's an absolute failure. Like he's like, we don't know why, we don't know what, like we just got beat. Like we're gonna have to go and regroup for the next 2 weeks and figure out what the hell happened. And this hurts. I mean, that's what it's supposed to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that happens. It's like I saw that going around Twitter as well, and I was just like, this is beyond idiotic.
Right.
But
Here's the other my other point on this too, and then we'll move to the AL. But the other thing is that the Padres made huge midseason acquisitions and changed the complexity of their team. And the guys they brought in are playoff veterans. Juan Soto, Josh Hader, they've been in the playoffs a bunch. And Hader had his struggles in the regular season. So did Juan Soto. Those guys came up in clutch situations and absolutely dominated. Hader saved all 3 of the Padres wins. Soto got the huge hitting game 4. Those guys were major presences in the Padres system, like in the Padres lineup. And in going out and doing that, you look back on it now and it's a resounding success because they won this series. Now they got to go out and finish it off. I haven't checked the score of this game, but they got to go finish off the Phillies and get in the World Series. But paying a huge price for Juan Soto, changing the culture of that locker room halfway through the season, essentially pulling the lifeblood from the Brewers, who missed the playoffs, and with Josh Hader. And even though Hader struggled for the Padres in the regular season, he's in there. He locked down every game. He was throwing 100 miles an hour. He was absolutely electric. And I look at what the Dodgers did at the deadline. They got Chris Martin, who was good, and that was it. They felt very satisfied with, complacent almost with their team. They didn't really try to change anything. They didn't make the Max Scherzer and Trey Turner move. They didn't go get Mookie Betts. They were just kind of like, we're not going to overpay for anybody. We're just going to be good around the edges. I'm not going to say that was the reason, but it definitely feels like it could have been in this instance, because that team is always winning 100 games, is always in the playoffs. They didn't get anybody in there that was going to change whether or not they got to the World Series. They didn't improve by anything, and they allowed a team like the Padres to close up with them.
Now, sorry, I can make the argument on this one though. They were in on the Soto talks. They finished
Mm-hmm.
second on this Soto talks, so they were right there. And it's also, I mean, sure they traded for Gallo too, but whatever. That I mean,
Oh,
he wasn't even playing. Um, but on a team like that, where who were you supposed to go after that was going to make your team better? I mean, you
yeah.
went after the star player in Juan Soto. You did. I mean, but you also didn't know that Walker Buehler was going to have Tommy John surgery and wasn't going to return that year.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know that Tony Gonsolin, in the end of August or beginning of September, who was having, a Cy Young caliber season, was going to go on the injured list and not be the same and barely make it back for the playoffs. He wasn't even fully healthy. You weren't sure that Blake Trinan was going to come back, so you acquired a reliever in Chris Martin, who was really good. You didn't know that Dustin May was going to be as ineffective as he was. He came back, he was solid at times, but I mean, there was legitimate things. You didn't know Chris Taylor was going to have a neck injury and not be able to hardly play either. Like, there's just little
Yeah.
things that I don't think you could have. I don't think it's fair
Right.
to say that they didn't make the move because they were in on the big move, and outside of that move, there was nothing else around the edges of that team that they could have really done at the time to know that they would have needed to get better, right? And what it really comes down to in the playoff series is I think they had the lack of energy. They had the business like mentality. They just thought we're good enough. We'll figure it out, and they didn't, and they got beat.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the thing. But enough rambling on from my end. I know I rambled on a lot about that one, but
No,
we'll
no
go ahead.
worries.
We'll go ahead and jump over to the AL side now, and we'll start with the Seattle Mariners against the Houston Astros. And you know, game one, it looked like it was going to be Seattle. I mean, Seattle
Yeah.
jumped out against Justin Verlander in that first inning, got a run, came back in the second inning, got three more, and then in the fourth, got two more. I mean, they were up 6-0 on the Astros there, and then the Astros were able, or sorry, the Astros got two in the third, so it was six
Yeah.
two at a time, and then the Astros got one in the fourth to make it 6-3. The Mariners got one in the seventh to make it 7-3, and then they got two in the eighth, and then in the ninth inning, Yordan Alvarez with a walk-off three-run homer against Robbie Ray of all people. And I really feel like that just took the wind out of the Mariners' sails there and allowed Houston to kind of dominate and then sweep this series.
Yeah, and that's without mentioning the 18 inning game three they played on, I believe that was Sunday, where Houston just they played deep into the night and Jeremy Pena finally hit a home run late. But that was a very wild first game, and to the point that the Robbie Ray move to go for Yordan Alvarez. I mean, we've been talking about Robbie Ray the whole time as kind of the weak link of the Mariners, and he comes in relief, throwing a sinker, which is not one of Robbie Ray's primary pitches. He normally is four seam fastball, curveball, primary pitches, like to 75%. I'll have to look it up whether or not that's exactly it, but he's mostly a four seam fastball guy. He comes in, he throws a sinker to Yordan Alvarez on like, and it leaks right over the middle of the plate, and Yordan killed it. I mean, that is the least likely possible outcome of a formerly 6-2 Astro or Mariners lead that I could have possibly expected from this game. I mean, they have so many really talented arms, and they really got. I think they just got a little too cute um, with that move. You trying to get righty lefty and trying to outthink it. We're not going to start Robbie Ray, so we'll just use him here. And Ray came in and he pitched good in game three, but he wasn't the same this year as he was last year, and that was kind of evident through the Blue Jay series, and it was evident here. Yordan Alvarez, man, he has a almost 12% championship win probability added over the first three games here in this series because of that home run and then the hit in game two, and he had an intentional walk that led to a Bregman hit in game two as well. So this Astros lineup's really good. Jose Altuve didn't even have a hit, and they still played well enough to win this series, pretty much going away too. this team's going to be really dangerous. And that's without Justin Verlander looking good. That's without Jose Altuve showing up. Um, I'm definitely nervous. I'd be nervous if I was the Yankees because the Astros, I think, conquered fate in this series a little bit, and I think that means they're going to be a dangerous team going forward.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the series, right? Justin Verlander gave up 6 runs in this series.
Hmm.
Framber Valdez gave up 2 runs, which is kind of a typical Framber Valdez start, right? Like he's a quality start guy. He went 5 2/3 with 2 runs. I think that's about what you could probably expect. The only other guy that gave up a run on that pitching staff was Christian Javier, and he gave up 1.
Yeah.
Everybody else in that bullpen or starting rotation went scoreless. Lance McCullers had a 6 inning scoreless start. Luis Garcia 6 innings scoreless. Brian Abreu, Hunter Brown, both 3 innings scoreless. Rafael Montero another 3 innings scoreless. Like, we went into this series saying the pitching staff was going to be the weakness of the Astros. The pitching staff was going to be the advantage for the Mariners. They were going to win by out pitching the Astros, and the Astros
Right.
went in there and outpitched them.
Right.
Like, literally, if the Astros are able to pitch like this team would be unstoppable.
Right.
And it's easy to say that they're the best team left in the playoffs at the moment, especially if they're able to pitch like that, because Altuve is going to bounce back. Like, he's not going to go hitless in the next series, right?
Hmm.
You're going to have Jordan Alvarez be just fine as well. Like, this team is just really dangerous, and there was something around that Mariners team. They fought hard until the end. They had the lead in game 1. Game 2 was still a close game as well. I think it was 4-2. And then that 18 inning that went 6 hours and like 22 minutes game. They're a really fun team. I'm gonna be excited to watch them. They're gonna be around for a long time. They're only gonna get better. Um, but this was just kind of the Astros being the Astros, and kind of proving the point there in this series.
The Mariners are in good hands. Julio Rodriguez was really good and made a really good catch there in the third game to keep the game scoreless. And then George Kirby's been excellent in this playoffs. I'm not at all worried for the Mariners. I think this is their upswing. They won a big playoff series. They made the playoffs again, broke the schneid. Now the focus can be on, improving the team in the offseason and going for, coming after the Astros and trying to close that gap in the AL West. As for the Astros, Yuli Gurriel had like 6 hits or something. It's a This is a team that even with some struggles from some big names, everybody came out and played well. Everyone that they needed to. The recipe, you see the recipe for the Astros winning. They're going to pitch well. Everyone on the team's going to pitch well, and then they're going to get big hits from their big names, and that's how they're going to win the games. That's how they're going to go into the ALCS. Is almost a boring team to talk about because they have so many like skilled players. Like, we haven't even mentioned Kyle Tucker or Pena hit the home run. Those guys were rock solid in this series again, and it's just going to be a matter of the Astros um, finding those runs off of the Yankees offense and then trying to hold them down. So I know this one's more a preview-ish, but 18 innings. I mean, that was a very very long game of scoreless baseball. Just crazy game. I wonder if the Astros will be fatigued after that. That would be maybe my only thing. Um, but they're going to get a long rest anyway, so they should be fine.
Well, if the Astros are going to be fatigued, so is the team they're going to be facing. It
Right.
is going to be pretty fatigued with the Guardians and Yankees series. That we don't have the updated stats through Game 5 because it just happened this
Hmm.
afternoon. I think a couple of those games got just postponed. It backed them up to today's game, but the Yankees were able to win in 5. Um, you know, Yankees took good Game 1 there on the back of Garrett Cole, who had an amazing start. Game 2, Guardians were able to win 4-2. Kind of flip that home field advantage, like I was talking about in the Braves and Phillies series. Then they were able to win Game 3. The Guardians were 6-5. Went into Game 4, and Garrett Cole, shoved again. I think it was 7 innings with like 8 strikeouts or something like that in Game 4. And then Game 5 got postponed today, and I'm really interested. I mean, I know we'll never know, but to see what that game would have looked like if it had to be played yesterday rather than today, because if it was today, they were able to start Nestor Cortez on 3 days rest, where yesterday he would have only been able to go like an inning or two out of the bullpen, and they would have had to start Jamison Tyon as well. And I think you might have had a different conversation to the series. But the Yankees were able to jump all over Aaron Savali in the first inning. Giancarlo Stanton hit a 3-run homer. I think Rizzo hit an RBI single, and then Judge hit a
Mm-hmm.
homer as well.
Yep.
Later on, I think Savali only got one out for them, and they were very, very reluctant to do Shane Bieber on 3 days rest, which could have been their downfall.
It's funny. There's no way I would have pitched Aaron Savale in this game, and he has been horrible this year. And I'm not Terry Francona. Terry Francona is a World Series winning manager, but I can't understand that logic. Even if I'm just pitching an inning or two of Bieber, and then I'm going to the bullpen, and I'm using Stefan, and I'm using Clase, and I'm using all those guys for 2 innings, I would way rather do that and continue playing than throw Savale out there and immediately give up more runs than my team can score. Just a horrible decision there, which really flipped the series off, or flipped the series on its head, because I think the Guardians had the advantage for the most part, going in to Game 5 there, or Game 4 rather, because the Yankees were down and came back. But Game 2, or it was 2 or 3, Josh Naylor hits a big home run and does a little crying baby celebration on Garrett Cole and made this series a little chippy. But
No, that was game
um,
4.
it was Game 4, yeah, and the Yankees come back and win that game anyway, right? And it now they're feeling it. I almost wonder if that was kind of the turning point where Naylor kind of set up the Yankees to fail, honestly, because I think they were even still down. The Guardians were at that point, and the Yankees were able to hold them off. Naylor wasn't really able to do anything else, and Anthony Rizzo had a really good series. Aaron Judge hit the home run. Harrison Bader hit 3 home runs in this series. So contact hitter, defensive center fielder Harrison Bader. And I know I was talking about the Yankees playing really good defense and kind of out scrappying the Guardians, but they did it on the strength of their home runs and their pitching in this one. Garrett Cole, a lot of strikeouts. They were able to kind of make the Guardians more susceptible to the strikeouts than anybody else. But Cole was the MVP of this series for sure. 16 strikeouts in 2 starts. Just monster performance from him and from the power packed Yankees lineup. And Game 5, I do feel like the Guardians really screwed up there by even sending um, him to the mound. Oh
Savali.
gosh, what's his name? Savale. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he only went one out, and then you went to Sam Henches, who went an inning and 2/3, and then you went to Stefan, who went for 2 1/3. Then you went to Karinchak, who went 2 1/3, and then Clase for an inning and a third to get through this game. Like, you have the entire mold right there. Henches and Stefan both gave up a run at themselves, but you have the mold there, because
mm-hmm.
if Bieber were to go 2 innings on that in that, then you have Hedges only has to go an inning. Stefan probably only has to go an inning, right? Or an inning and a
Yeah,
third, or an inning and 2/3, and then you can go Karen check, and then to Clase. And that's not even mentioning like Eli Morgan,
Eli Morgan.
who had been one of their better relievers as well, didn't even pitch in this game. So you could have easily maneuvered it around to even go a full bullpen game, to go like Eli Morgan, Henches, Stefan. I mean, if all of those guys are pitching 2 innings or an inning and 2/3, or more than one inning plus in general, you could have made it a bullpen game around those guys, rather than sending a guy who had, like, I think it was close to a 5. It might have been like a 4.92 ERA on the season, who had been really, really
Mm-hmm.
bad for you so far. Like, against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium in Game 5, like, that's just not a good match. You get hit. Put a guy out there who's been getting hit all year in a bandbox stadium against a team who's just waiting to slug.
Yeah.
That
You
it's
also have you also had Oscar Gonzalez have another heroic effort in, I think it was Game 2, when the Guardians came back and won late. Um, yeah, the scene in Cleveland down that game. I don't know if you saw it. It was from an apartment across the street from the stadium when Gonzalez hits that 2-run double to win the game. It was a 2-run homer to win the game. Just so loud. Actually, that was Game 3, but it was so loud from across the street. It sounded like you were standing in the stadium, and I know it sounded even louder. I mean, Cleveland was up for the Guardians there, and I think they just let him down, honestly. The team was going to play scrappy. They were going to hit the ball on the ground. Stephen Kwan was really good this series. Jose Ramirez was his usual self. I think the pitching, wildly enough, let Cleveland down in this one, and that was going to be the way they won it. McKenzie wasn't good, lost game one, or I think it was game two. I
It
think it
was
was
game
game
three.
three. Yeah, counting my way up. He wasn't good, but Quantrill wasn't good. The Yankees won that one. Just you know, they had their chances. They won the two games that they did. Um, strength of their lineup putting the ball in play, especially against the Yankees bullpen. Clark Schmidt gave up kind of a bunch of runs late because he's trying to put out a fire when the Yankees were up in Game 3. But all in all, I think this Cleveland team had more, but the Yankees were a better team, better prepared for a series like this, and they were much better managed in this series, which is weird to say because Aaron Boone is always on the hot seat for New York, but my man threw Garrett Cole out there, let him go, and threw Nestor Cortez out there, let him go. Even on short rest, you put Nestor out there, you let him pitch. He's really good at managing his pitch count. He's really good at managing contact. They did exactly what they needed to do in this series. New York did, and that gets them the W.
Yeah, it kind of feels like Aaron Boone was on the hot seat in this series. I mean, when they were down 2-1, everyone was already calling for Boone to be fired. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the Guardians. I picked the Guardians in this series, and it was everything that I thought going into this series what was going to happen for them to have a chance. Right? We knew the Yankees were going to come out quick against Cal Quantrill in Yankee Stadium. Then you needed to find a way to win the Bieber and the McKenzie games. You did that. And then you had to just win one of the next two. You had Quantrill starting at home, which was where he's been a lot better this year. You had a really good game, but you just happened to run into another buzzsaw Garrett Cole. Like, and then you go to game 5 where you have the scenario set up there where you have either Bieber or that bullpen, and you just went with Savale, and that's ultimately what ended up costing you.
Yeah.
But this team, they put up a fight, and I think they put up a lot more fight than people were giving them credit for going into this series. They are, I believe, the youngest team in the major leagues, and they're showing a lot of promise. I mean, Jose Ramirez, we know what he is, but Stephen Kwan, I mean,
Yeah.
Andres Jimenez didn't really play well in this series. Oscar Gonzalez didn't really play well. Josh Naylor didn't really play well. I mean, you're
Well,
talking about well, I mean,
Gonzalez and Naylor both had their big hits,
I
but
mean, and
yeah,
they had big hits, but I'm talking about in the broad spectrum of this series, they didn't play
yeah.
well. I mean, you had Stephen Kwan and Jose Ramirez both hit 412 in this series, and then
We
the
don't have all
next,
the stats yet, though.
well, yeah, but
Also, so I
well, they
got
didn't
screwed up on that.
they didn't hit much in the fifth game. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I
Garrett
mean,
Cole, man.
just looking at this, you have their third highest hitter was Gabriel Arias with 7 at bats. Outside of that, everyone was below 250 going into game 5 where they didn't hit much in the first place. But like, this is a young team. They're going to get better. They are incredibly, incredibly dangerous still. They can develop pitching. They're developing young hitting and playing good defense, and they have an energy around them that's really, really fun. This team will be around for a while.
Well, the question surrounding this franchise in Cleveland is the same as it's always been, and it's will the owners allow the team to supplement? Because there is a good core here, but if they don't add to it, I think you're going to see a lot of flameouts in the playoffs, just like this, because they just aren't going to have the depth. They just aren't going to have that quality. I mean, how long has it been since they've had a quality hitting outfielder until this season with Stephen Kwan? It's been years since like Michael Brantley days. So um, you know, I would like to see them spend a little money, try to make this team a little bit better, but and you're going up against the Yankees. I mean, the team that spends the obvious uh, scapegoat for spending money in sports is the New York Yankees, and you can just kind of see that with the guys who did hit well. Anthony Rizzo hit well, and Giancarlo Stanton hit well, and Garrett Cole, $300 million man, goes in and just shoves in the playoffs finally. So the spending of the Yankees really shone through in this series and shows that yeah, it's good to spend money sometimes if you want to win baseball games.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and jump over to predicting the championship series now, and we'll go ahead and start in the National League since we already have that game ongoing here. Um, I'll go ahead and let you predict first and break down your side of it.
Phillies are up 1-0 in the top of the fourth.
Bryce Harper solo
Um,
homer.
yeah, so it's funny. I mean, I'm going to say exactly what I said before the last Phillies series, which is if Bryce Harper, who again hit 500, hit 3 homers in the last series, and is now homered in this series already, if he shows up playing like the MVP that we know he can be, if Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler are in dominant form, I am going to have a very tough time picking against this Phillies team. That being said, this Padres team has got all the fight in the world. We saw it against the Dodgers. We saw it when they were down in Game 4. They came crawling back. You can't let your guard down. But the way the Phillies have been playing and the way that they seem to be, they feel like the new team of destiny after the Mariners left. I I think I'm going to pick the Phillies in this, but it's going to be like 6 or 7 games. This one's going to go down to the wire, and I don't think you're going to have a bad game in this series. I think these teams are going to be slugfesting back and forth. Between Harper, Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, you've got Machado and Juan Soto and Brandon Drury and Josh Bell and some of these other guys on the Padres. Trent Grisham's been playing really well in the playoffs. It's going to be down to which pitching staff can slow the other offense down the most. And the Phillies were able to do that with a team that I think both of us would say is stronger in the Braves. The Padres pitching staff was able to shut down the Dodgers, and they're stronger. So at this point, it's kind of a wild card basically because these teams are a little less skilled than those teams that we would have expected to be here. So what I'm excited about here is these offenses going up against these kind of maybe a little bit less good pitching staffs, and like Darvish will be good, and I think Joe Musgrove will be good. But once you get into that Padre bullpen and you get past, I think it's oh man, I can't remember that guy's name, Suarez or
Robert Suarez.
Robert Suarez. That guy's really good. But once you get past him, I mean, the Padres bullpen definitely has some warts, and so does the Phillies bullpen. David Robertson, I think, will be back for this series, but I think it'll be Phillies in like 7 with some epic moments and maybe another bat slam, something like that.
Yeah, for this series, I think it goes one of two ways. It goes a short series and the Phillies win, or a long series and the Padres win. I just if I like the Padres' depth throughout their pitching staff a lot better, and offensively they can match up with the Phillies. It's going to come down to if they're able. If the Phillies are going to have to need Wheeler, Nola to win, and then you're going to have to get a good start from Syndergaard, right? For at that point, where the
Yeah.
Padres, you have Darvish in game 1, you're probably going to go Snell in game 2, who Snell was hit or miss here or there, but he can find ways to be effective. Musgrove, who's another one of those big game pitchers for them. We've mentioned the depth in their bullpen. I doubt I mean, they might have to start Clevenger, but I would assume they'd probably work their way around that. Maybe start somebody else instead. Um, I think it being a 7-game series, if it goes that long, I just think that the Padres will wear down that Phillies pitching staff. Right, we've had legitimate questions about their bullpen throughout the season. In both of the first 2 series, we said that, and it hasn't come back to bite them yet. Are they going to be able to do it through another 7-game series? That's going to be a real question mark.
Yeah.
If they're able to do that, if the bullpen withstands, the Phillies will win this series. But I don't know in a 7-game series that it'll be able to withstand the Padres offensively. So I'm going to go with the Padres over the Phillies in a long series. That's going to be my official prediction. But if this goes to a short series, I think the Phillies will win on that side.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be close. I think is the ultimate thing, unless the Phillies just do what they did in games 4 and 5 or 3 and 4 and blow away the Padres like they did the Braves. On to the ALCS. Who do you have winning versus Astros versus Yankees?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Astros in the series. I just the Yankees showed against the Guardians that they are able to be beat, and this Astros team is a lot better than the Guardians team. They have a lot better pitching um, throughout the entire, a lot better pitching than the Yankees, I should say, through their entire rotation wise, and then to the into the bullpen and the offense. If you get the Aaron Judge and the Giancarlo Stanton that struggled in this series against the Astros, that's going to be really hard for the Yankees to score. And the Astros just have that clutch gene. They have the experience. They've been deep in the postseason runs. If they're able to withstand Garrett Cole and win one of his starts in the series, they could get railroaded. They could railroad the Yankees. And with the Yankees having, being multiple postponed games, and then this one that was supposed to be yesterday, and then it got postponed to today, and game one starts tomorrow, like in Houston again. It's a really short turnaround. It's really long days for the Yankees, and then having to fly over to Houston and play two in Houston. I believe back to back days. I could be wrong on that, but I believe it's back to back days. And then you'll be able to regroup for a day. I think it's going to be a lot, especially early in this series. And if the Astros take those two games, I think it's downhill from the Yankees from there.
Yeah, I think the Yankees are a flawed team with very much emphasis on the three true outcomes, where you've got the walks, the strikeouts, the homers. We saw that with just kind of the production from the Yankees lineup in this series. Oswaldo Cabrera hit a homer, Harrison Bader had three, Judge had two, Rizzo hit a homer, Stanton hit a homer in that third game. Up and down the lineup, a lot of homers. Josh Donaldson had like 4 walks. I think you'll see a lot of just working the count against this Astros pitching staff. But the thing is that the Astros do not walk a lot of batters. They come into the zone. They are not afraid to challenge. I don't think they will be afraid of Judge, even though he's hit, 64 home runs now? Maybe 65? I think he's 64. I think he's only had two. The and the Astros have every bit the potent lineup that the Yankees do, with definitely a better pitching staff. And it just showed in that Mariners series. The Astros were just able to shut down a team that had been very, very cohesive in stringing runs together. And, after that first game with Verlander, I don't expect Verlander to look bad again. But if he does, that'll help the Yankees. But every game after the Cole Verlander game, it's going to be you know, an advantage for Houston in the starting pitching side, and that's not including the bullpen where Houston again has the advantage. So I'm I'm picking the Astros. They're just a better team, but like we saw with both NLDS series, it doesn't matter who the better team is when it comes to a short series like this. Whoever can just go out and play the better baseball and get the bigger hits in the better moments, that's who's going to win this series. This one feels like one that'll be over in 5. Whether it be the Yankees that kind of start they come together, they start torching the Astros pitching, and that they're able to shut them down. I mean, Altuve is like over 16 or something. If some of those other guys start fading like Altuve has, I think Alvarez might be hurt too from that last game. In that last game where that went 18 innings, I think he was like over 7 or something. So um, I do worry about that, but overall, I think I think Houston's going to beat the Yankees here, and they've beaten them twice before in this series to go to the World Series, 2017 and 2019. So um, that's I think third time's not the charm for the Yankees. I think they're going to be looking up at the Astros at the end of the day.
Yeah, and postseason baseball, it's like we were saying earlier. Postseason baseball is different. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we said it in last series with all those teams that are a lot better than the Braves and Dodgers were better teams than the Phillies and Padres, and they got beat. The Astros are a better team than the Yankees, but it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to move on. Um, there is a scenario where the Yankees are able to win, but they have to come out and jump on the Astros right away. Um, so that's really going to be the
Yeah,
recipe: is jump on them right away and basically punch them in the mouth, and then don't allow them to come back like the Mariners did. Because I think you saw the Mariners do that in Game One against the Astros. If they were able to win that game, I think you would have
would
seen
have
a
been.
different series.
Yeah, I think this series is a 4 or 5 game series. No matter what happens, I just if I'm thinking odds, I'm thinking it's like a 75% chance the Astros are the ones that slow the Yankees, and 25% chance it's the Yankees slowing the Astros.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and then to wrap up on the prediction side, we did get Matt's predictions, and he's going with Astros over the Yankees, and he's also going with Padres over Phillies. So I think Matt and I have the same predictions, and David is with us on the ALCS, and then he varies on the NLCS.
yeah, and I like the Padres a lot, so I got to do the old reverse tactic here. I like I like the Phillies and the Padres. I think I'm going to be cheering for whoever wins in the NL, because those teams are just really fun. Both of them feature former Cubs, so some of my favorite guys in the game are on both of these teams. So um, pretty neutral overall on who wins it, but I'll pick the Phillies. I think I just 7 game series. It's going to be long. That one feels to me like a more competitive series. It's got the makings of one of those 7 game classics.
I'm also going with reverse jinx on the NL side, hoping we could see a Bryce Harper World Series because I think that'd be pretty electric again. But
Yep, the way he's playing, especially he's got NLCS MVP, World Series MVP, playoff MVP
well,
look about him right now.
yeah, and I mean, it was the year after he left that the Nationals went on to win that World
Hmm.
Series, and it's like he was part of building that, never got there, and it'd be fun to see him get there in the how energetic he is in that atmosphere would be pretty fun. But any last things you want to wrap up on?
I want to mention that the teams that are facing off in the NLCS right now are the teams that spent money in the 2018 to 19 offseason, the signers of Harper and Machado, and they're going head to head. And it's good to spend money. Free agency is going to be exciting, and I encourage everybody in their online chats to encourage the free agent signings and the teams to spend money and not to skimp on it, because you're looking at teams that many a team wishes they were where the Phillies and Padres are right now. Um, and I distinctly remember that the White Sox wouldn't go above $250 million for Machado, and boy, they sure were about a good MVP candidate third baseman away from making the playoffs this year. So interesting how that works.
Yeah, it's interesting that both of those were in the same draft class. Drafted just
Yep,
one spot apart, or two spots technically. One
I think
and
two. Yeah,
one and three, they were drafted. So there's really only number two in the middle of them. But who was that one? Was that Bregman? Was that the Bregman draft
no,
too?
no, it
No,
wasn't.
it
No, it's
wasn't.
a nobody, or it might be like Jeremy Hellickson or something.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
gotta,
It
I
is
gotta
something
look it
like
up.
that.
2010.
Yeah, it's 2010. Who was that?
Jameson Talon. Actually,
Oh,
he's still alive
he's
around too.
he's in the Yankees. So we have a one.
Yep.
We have one, two, and three still from that draft class in the
How about
playoffs.
that?
But um, yeah, that is a pretty interesting matchup there because they were kind of battling each other head to head in that year to get who's going to get the higher contract, and Harper won that one. So it'll be interesting to see on the on field side whose team has more success. But that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Bat Slam podcast. We're going to wrap it up with that as well. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.